that's a significant part of what she does, dealing with the building permits, processing those, making sure that they're entered into our computer tracking program that we have. And then when Dave has reviewed them, he'll write up some comments for conditions of approval, and she prepares the permit and mails out things like that. She's a lead person in answering the phone or questions at the counter, that kind of thing. So.
Skip, just to bring you up to speed, the first questions that we looked at was the department staffing and size, the full-time wages, part-time wages. Last year to this year, this department is being recommended to be left with John, Dave, and two part-time people, 20 hours, is that what?
2 20 hours.
2 20-hour positions with this particular budget. Between the wages last year to this year, there's about a $13,978 drop versus last year. And then the rest of the line items, as we looked at it, were reflective of the wage drops.
Okay.
And then when you walked in, we had asked John about understanding the department and manpower usage, and that's what he was explaining. So that's where we're at.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah, I apologize for being late. Just one of those deals. I couldn't get the customer to get off the phone. Customer comes first.
Anything else on page 16?
Skip, I don't, so they leave that to you.
Not right now.
Page 17, what makes up your, can you tell me about that software license support line? BMSI permit software?
Yeah, that's the software I made reference to earlier with the building permits. We also, so we track what permits come in, where they are, who the contractor is, what kind of work is being done, any conditions of approval, and then the inspections, as those are made, they get entered in. His notes are transcribed into the computer by the secretary, and then ultimately a certificate of occupancy is issued, and that all gets recorded on software. We also record or track our any planning board or board of adjustment application that comes in. Those are all entered on the MSI software, as well as the Historic District and Heritage Commission applications.
So this is specialized software for that purpose?
Yes.
And you pay an annual fee?
We do. And that's the annual fee that you see there. We've estimated a 5% increase in the cost for that next year. That was a recommendation from Jeff.
We, just as a note, we saw with the tax collector's office that they had budgeted $4,800, and after they had submitted, they came in at $5,200. I think was the. So they saw an increase unexpectedly.
Yeah, we did too, actually. We had an update this year. I don't know if that was the explanation for the incremental surprise, but yeah.
No.
So this, I don't think last year we budgeted for as much as an increase. You can see it only went up $80 from 2020 to 2100. Excuse me, 2009 to 2010. So and then $61 from 2010 to 2011. So 5%, I think, is probably a better estimate. And hopefully we still have enough there to cover it. If we don't, obviously we draw from other sources in our budget.
I'm going to ask you the same question I asked the tax collector's office, and I'm guessing I know the answer, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Is there any way to reduce cost of postage via new technologies, or your hands tied on a lot of things?
A lot of our postage is noticing to abutters, and so there's an abutter fee we collect from applicants, and so a lot of our postage is covered by those abutter fees, but that's only for the abutters. Although that's a significant amount of mail that goes out of our office. We also mail out the building permits or certificates of occupancy or building permits when they're ready.
But those are effectively paid for because of the fees.
Right, they paid their fees.
To pass through.
Right. We don't do, I do a few letters, obviously there are plenty of letters to be written or any notice of violation, that kind of thing. All of those, just it's not a huge volume. There's probably a way to reduce some mailing. In fact, this year we did implement a change, and that is we would mail out the planning board packets to them, you know, in a large manila envelope. And since about midway, I think, through the year, we started to have them come and pick those up, which, you know, that's helped because it's probably, what, a couple of bucks or something per mailing.
No, you surprised me a little bit with the answer because the tax collector's office says that they're bound by law on certain things they have to do. That the law says it has to be done via U.S. Postal Service. Yeah. So you're telling me there's some things that maybe you have a little more flexibility than they do. Okay.
Yeah. Now there's some things we do have to mail out, certified mail, to make sure that they, you know, if we have to go to court on something, that we're covered. So.
But the amount of that is relatively small.
Correct, yeah. And we like to keep it that way. But we do every single abutter notice is certified mail, so that's why the number's a little high there. But again, we've collected a fee to compensate for that.
The only other question I have on this page, John, is, and I don't know if everybody wants to go that far down, is the Planning Commission. I know that last year we had a big discussion on that. And, you know, at the end of the day, I believe that we agreed to fund that and be part of that. But I guess I'd like to ask those same questions, the value to Guilford with that.
Well, in my opinion, there's a lot of value there. By the way, this number, I did just get that new number, and I don't have it with me, but it's about $200 less than what I put in here. And I can get that number for you before you leave today.
So you're saying you could reduce this a little bit?
Yeah, it's about $200 less, so $8,300 or so. But you know, the Lakes Region Planning Commission, we're part of a regional. It's not just planning. You know, it's working cooperatively with other towns for training, helping people be smart with, you know, what they do to the lake, that kind of thing. You know, it's a lot of transportation funding comes through these guys, and I don't have much to do with that end of it. Sheldon Morgan is our TAC committee representative, and he could go on at great length, I imagine, the advantages of belonging to the commission, just for no other reason, the transportation funding that is available and the regional planning coordination for that. But I'm, you know, I deal with those guys frequently if I have a question or if there's a gap in my knowledge, or you know, I need a contact for some information. I go to them and they readily provide it.
Such as?
Well, we needed some training on some planning ethics. This is the most recent one. This is the one that's coming to mind. And they direct me to the right place for where to find that. You know, that's not something I would frequently call somebody about or have need for. But that's the most recent example. Let's see if I can think of another one recently. But
well, one would hope that the ethics, I mean, the way you put it, that you seldom have to frequent the standards is a good thing. But I was thinking more along technical type stuff.
Well, there's a lot of mapping that they have done for the town, and they maintain those maps. They've provided those to our Conservation Commission recently with their natural resources inventory that they've done. And the person who's actually volunteered originally to do this natural resources inventory, now she's now full-time employed, so she's had to switch it over. Anyhow, we're saving a lot still. But anyhow, this person who's done that has drawn from the Lakes Region Planning Commission maps that were done many years ago, and she's updated those maps. And they have updated those maps too. They provided a lot of support to her as she's prepared that natural resources inventory.
Okay. So the question then comes in, is that being presented to the town in a form that can be put into our GIS system? Yes,
they have submitted that, and they discovered after they emailed it that there were a couple of errors, so they're fixing that right now. but we're going to be able to have it in both a PDF format for somebody to just look at it, right on the website, but we're also going to integrate it into the GIS so that people can go to the online mapping program that we have, and then our desktop mapping as well.
What does GIS stand for?
Graphical Information System.
Okay.
Geographical Information System.
What did I say?
Graphical,
Oh,
but that's all right.
sorry.
Yeah.
Well, this conservation information, how would that specifically help you in doing any of the zoning warrant articles that you have now?
It wouldn't necessarily help with that. I mean, they're trying to think of...
How specifically
one-
do you use that?
Yeah, one way that they have helped in the past, and they do from time to time, is as we have a need come up, we'll consult them for, do you have an example of an ordinance that somebody has in the area or throughout the state? They have a lot of resources like that available there because they've helped write a lot of these, a lot of the regulations. But we could ask them. We're looking for I think I did ask them for some guidance on accessory apartments a couple of years ago.
No, going back to off on a tangent, I was thinking more of the conservation information. How would you actually use that within the GIS, and then what you do here in this department?
Well,
you said it's great information. I'm curious to see how you use it.
Well, we haven't used it yet because they just barely got it done. I haven't even seen the whole thing I haven't seen a hard copy yet either, but we're anticipating using that, integrating it into the master plan, and then using that to help, set some goals in the town, and then we would undoubtedly make some zoning ordinance amendments that would address some of those issues in the master plan. That's the typical process or procedure for how that happens. First goes in the master plan, and then you take the master plan and implement it through zoning ordinances.
How many communities participate in this again? I know we covered this last year.
13?
I thought it was more than that, but everything they send out has that information on there.
Okay.
I thought it was in
Could you hand me that blue thing right there? Yeah. This is a few years old, 2000. Just 1 year.
approximately how many times per month do you think you access them for service?
Per month?
Support?
A couple of times per month. I mean, it's not something I'm doing all the time, but we're in communication on a much more regular basis than that. But we try to do as much as we can without going outside. I mean, we use them as a resource when needed. I'm thinking about 30 towns. Just going off the...
Okay.
Yeah.
And again, remembering from last year's discussion, so obviously, as we just talked about, conservation, so we're doing zoology, flora and fauna type studies. It's being fed in. We're doing traffic studies. And I guess part of that brings up the question again, how do you coordinate the traffic? I mean, most of the roads are already set in place.
Again, that's not my area of expertise. That's Sheldon, who works
Right.
with the TAC.
Right. If I remember right, we also talked about broadband deployment. And one of my bugaboos was, well, how would this group have a greater expertise on that than
I couldn't help
private?
that. I missed that discussion, I guess, on broadband.
Well, it seemed like there were a number of things that this planning commission does that would go into what is the value for our buck.
Mhm.
So,
Well, to
what
a
else
large
does it
degree,
do?
it's what we take to them. I mean, if the town has an interest in exploring something regarding expanding broadband throughout the region or throughout the town, we go to them and say, hey, can we put together a committee to study how we can improve broadband throughout the area? Something like that. That's how I would expect to use them, unless they themselves find a grant or something, and that's typically a lot of their source of money, I believe, for some of the special projects they do. But if they come across something like that, and again, I think they're probably better sources of explaining what they do.
Mhm.
I know how I interact with them, but But undoubtedly they could, you know, find some. I don't know if they can these days. Everything's pretty tight. But if there's a grant available, they could probably pursue, you know, some kind of a study on expanding broadband. I don't know if that's in their realm of expertise or not. But
If I remember right, Dale,
Cover a
do you
lot of
remember
things.
that discussion that they talked about that last time? I'm just trying to get what's the full range of what they do and what they'd offer the town.
Do we need to ask them to come in again? Yeah, they did last year.
Yeah, I'd have to go back.
I'm just asking what you guys think of that.
I'd have to go back and look through. I remember broadband coming up in the conversation.
Yeah, I can
I
go-
don't remember what their involvement was with that.
I can go back and look at the
Yeah.
video.
I think it. To that question, I would think it's going to be up to the committee again.
The whole committee.
If we come, well, it depends on how we come out of here. I don't know what everybody feels about this number. But I think if we're looking to take it back out, then it's probably going to be a committee question, and if we can resolve it just through our cordial discussions up there, or whether we have to bring in
Kim Collette?
Jim Collette again, as we did last year, although, which may be, maybe if it comes to that, might be.
Oh.
I'm not sure how much has changed, but we do have new people on the committee that
Yeah.
weren't there last year. So.
Yeah, that's true. One who was sitting with us. Oh, you were here.
No, I was there
Kevin.
last year.
Kevin is.
So, yeah, Kevin.
But Phyllis, I don't think was on the committee.
Right.
So, well, I would say let's continue to walk through these first.
Yeah, I don't have anything else on that page.
what are the professional what is the development and training? It's down substantially. Well, yeah, it's down.
Which one is that? Oh, professional development training?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's down because I'm not proposing to go to the national conference next year. And this year it did include some money for that. The conference this year was in Boston, though, so it was easier. Next year it's in Los Angeles. And undoubtedly would just be cost prohibitive. So not going.
I see the actual is way down.
Yeah.
Even the budgeted.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I managed to. We had some money left over last year, and I actually they barely came up before the end of the year with the what do you call it, their agenda or whatever for the year, and they allowed registration the last 2 weeks of the year. And I thought, hey, I've got money, I will spend that money. So I spent last year's money on registering for the conference. About $600 or $700. I don't remember the exact number.
Okay. So do you expect to do the same thing at this point?
No, I'm not going this next year.
Okay.
And the other thing is, there's also transportation hasn't been submitted yet. But,
Nothing else on that page.
well, it's related specifically to that. And I was thinking I'd just take it out of that because that's where I budgeted for it. Just one large lump for going to the convention rather than splitting that up into the exact details for transportation, etc. Did that explain that?
Yeah.
Okay.
And the new copier is working well.
Oh, it is. Just made 20 copies. You know, it's easy copies, stapling, but no, we like it. It's a good machine. Just got it hooked up to the network too. So.
And your phone reduction is from what?
I think they recalculated how the bill is allocated.
Another one of those.
Yeah. That's one of those numbers that I was basically given. Not what I
I
calculated.
think we need to ask Scott to explain that again, because the same type of question came up in the other subcommittee that I sat down on with.
Well, I think part of it is that last year they purchased the new system. and therefore the costs were higher this year. It's more just maintenance rather than purchase.
Yeah.
I think.
But I think it's worth asking Scott, because he gives you that number, is that correct?
Yes. I think also the bill for the calls is lower. It sounded like it was down quite a bit. I don't know if.
I know we've gone back and forth on this, but I do think it makes sense for some budget categories not to be explained on the department level.
Correct. This would be one of them.
Right, this is one of them. It should be I mean, I understand why it's nice to allocate out so you know the true cost of a department because they have a portion of that expense. But from an explanatory or from a point of overall looking at it, it should be one number. Our phone went up X this year or down X this year, and it was because of this department or that, whatever. Although I don't think they can do that. Because if we end up in sessions like this where it's a line item that was assigned to, so you don't know.
No, I don't. I heard an explanation that details of which have disappeared.
But that's more of an issue. That's more of an overall process issue for
Correct.
Scott and Jeff, I think. So that's all I had on this.
The fuel cost was the only other one that I wanted to ask about. In 2010, the actual costs were $800. We know fuel costs have been up this year. Overall, they're starting to go down. I guess nobody has that crystal ball, but what do you think you're going to wind up this year? You're showing $770 through the end of August. So you think that's going to be a fairly close number?
Yeah, it looks like it. One of the cars is assigned to the building inspector, and the other car is not really assigned. It's just more assigned to the town hall. So that one's hard to predict. I know Public Works has actually driven the vehicle a number of times, and a lot of the gas for that car has come out of this line here, but this account. Whether they continue to use it or if there's a way to more accurately divide out the billing for that, I don't know. I've been told there is, but I haven't seen anything yet that would, if some other department uses it, that it would be charged to their fuel account. But no, we don't. We have not driven the other cars much for a variety of reasons. Trying to keep expenses down being one of them, and a reduction in activity being another.
And that was my last question on that page.
And that's the last page. What else do we have? Do we have any other tabs?
Not that I'm aware of.
Just
Conservation is later.
conservation's later with the Historic District Heritage Commission, but I think that's a $25 line item, and it's always been through the town administrator's budget.
Nothing else we're missing on this guy? Seems like there's...
No, I think more the next set of questions is what has been the activity, because you've already said that it's lowered activity, so we all know that the activity here in town is way down. So the question I have is how many new building permits have been pulled and how many what's the word I'm looking for? Not beautification, but just additional permits for changing existing structures. And
I could go
and the
get
technical
a printout
word
for you.
the technical word just escapes me.
Site plans, that kind of thing, or
No, just I want to put a garage.
Renovation.
I want to add a renovation. That's it.
I could go do a printout for you from our BMSI software.
That would be helpful.
All right, hold on just a moment.
Let's see what we're spending our money on for how much activity.
Must have been a slow news day for you to come down here to listen
No,
to us.
actually, it isn't. I've told you, I've always found that one of some of the critical issues that happen in towns happen through land use boards, because especially in New Hampshire, it is the biggest single asset most people will own, and it's the only tax base that most people have. And so what the planning board, zoning boards, conservation commission, and historic districts decide to me is equally important as what most selectmen decide. They're actually governing your tax base.
That's true.
I mean, that's all. you ever read The Power Broker?
No.
Power Broker is a book written by a brilliant man, or brilliant, you can call him whatever you want, Robert Moses, who basically
New York.
basically built New York City from his seat on the planning board. Designed all the parks, designed all the bridges, wielded all the influence, and had mayors, governors, and presidents bowing at his feet because of where he sat as the New York City planner. It's probably one of the best books, it's long, on planning and power that you will ever read. And it's a great read because Robert Caro wrote it. He wrote the Lyndon Johnson series, so he's a very good writer. You know, I mean, he makes planning interesting, which isn't really easy to do.
Yeah. And
To be honest with you, I mean, it's pretty dry stuff, you know.
yeah, you look at some of the folks I interact with online say, okay, look at Detroit, lots of planning. Look at Houston, very little planning. And you go, interesting.
Well, I know. But
How do you plan for a decaying city like Detroit where they're saying, let's wipe out all the houses because nobody's in them?
I don't know. There's just a little bit of me that's glad the Lions are doing well so that the people of Detroit have something to be happy about. It's a city my heart really genuinely goes out to. 22% unemployment. You know, I mean, it's sad. It's just, at this point in time, it's just sad.
It is.
You know? I have no answers. I don't think any of us do. Just maybe the Lions can have a winning season, so they got something to brag about. I don't know.
Can they win on Thanksgiving Day?
Against Dallas? They should be able to.
No, they don't necessarily play Dallas. Sometimes they do.
Oh wait, actually I don't think they do. I think it's Dallas
'Cause
and
Dallas
Detroit
likes to
typically play on
host,
Thanksgiving Day,
yes.
but they usually have other opponents.
Yes.
They're the ones with the Thanksgiving Day games.
Yes.
Yeah, you're right. Oh boy, I went to watch that walk-off homer last night for Texas.
What sport is that?
Baseball.
Oh, yeah.
Walk-off grand slam in a playoff game. That's something. That kid. I hope he got his baseball back.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be something that
You know?
makes your career. You can always look back and say, this is what I did.
You know, yeah.
That's why Billy Maz is in the Hall of Fame. No. Nobody here knows who Billy Maz is.
347 permits. And that includes building permits, subdivisions, violations, sign permits, everything that we do, pretty much. Last year for the year we had 527.
Finish your copy.
And we had 402 through today last year. These are just different printouts. Just can't smoke that.
Want to smoke my pen?
All right, so the building permits are not for new housing, obviously, because there's very little going on. This is mostly for renovation.
Well, you know, I'm not sure I can answer that question, whether it's mostly for renovation or not, but yeah, I don't know. You would have to ask the building inspector, because that one doesn't tell me how many are new homes and so forth. We do break that down each year in the annual report, town report. So we will have that. Right now I don't have that, but I could show you the trend in that.
Well, take an educated guess. It is most likely renovations rather than new homes, but I have not heard of any spurts in new home building in Guilford.
No, I don't know of any spurts either.
I'm missing what these are, John. I see
Okay.
two different subsets
Yeah, this
based
is
on the
all
dates.
this is all of last year, and this is through today. You know, showing an equivalent number of days of 2010 versus 2011, because that's the 2011 report through today. That's the 2010
okay,
report
see, I was
through.
expecting that to say 1/1/2011 rather than 2010.
Yeah, this is this year, and that's last year.
Okay.
Through the same day, and that's the entire year last year.
Okay. I'm not gonna take this there.
So yeah, it's down. What does it say? 347.
Right.
Yeah, and we have what 402 last year through this day.
May I see that one, please? Sure. Okay, that was the dates I was expected to see. I see what happened there. Okay.
Yeah. I was talking to the building inspector earlier, and he thinks since he's been here, he's had about the past 10 years or so about 500 new homes in town.
Well, I could see that a few years ago.
No, since he's been here.
Yeah, the
Not
relevant
here.
question is what's the rate of increase over the last, say, 2 years, and especially this year.
Yeah,
So-
increase. It's probably a decrease in the number of new homes. Yeah, I would think so.
Well, yeah, I'm thinking it's probably down to like 10. Just guessing off the top of my head, that's where we'd need the numbers from you. As opposed to 10 years ago, you were probably doing quite a multiple of that.
I could try to find out. It's we have our annual reports right behind you.
Well, that would tell us for last year, and then the question is
Well, this
what's the
is
rate
10
of,
years ago.
what's the slope for this year?
Not sure we tracked how many new homes in 2001. We may have. Yeah, during the year, building permits were issued for 66 new residential units. 60 were issued in 2000, including both single-family homes and condominiums, so that includes everything. In 2001, they started with the Stonewall Village, which is a condo development. It's a single home, basically. They're detached, but they're condo units. So that was, what, 30-something right there. And last year we had 20 single-family homes. That would include, again, any condos that there were.
And this year to date, what was the number, John?
I don't know the number of homes out of that number that shows up for building permits.
Oh,
We have
okay.
121.
121 building permits. So, and back, you know,
But that basically goes back to if you're going to do anything on a structure, you have to get a permit. Pretty
yeah,
much.
yeah, pretty much. I mean, some things you don't have to. Like if you're going to replace your counter in your kitchen or something, you don't need a building permit for that, unless you're going to mess around with the plumbing or the electrical or something. Then you need a plumbing or electrical permit. But 2001, with the 66 dwellings, we had 321 total permits. So that's give you a sense for that.
321 total in 2001.
Yeah.
What was total in 2010?
527.
Total in 2010 was 195.
What's the 527? You had that was.
That's total permits, every kind of permit.
Including signs and different stuff like that.
Yeah,
And
121.
then,
We have to get permits for everything now.
Yeah.
except for your kitchen counter, which that's the one thing we have to do in our house is update that.
But if I had to replace my window, I'd have to pull a permit, right?
No, no, you don't. Not siding, not painting, not. You do for re-roofing only if you're going to go add a third layer, I think, or more. You'd have to get a. Dave needs to see that the building's going to hold it up. You know, it's going to have some kind of an engineering. It's a weight issue. That's a building code, pretty standard. But no, typically siding, windows, doors, no permit required.
And partially it was an offhanded comment, but there's a little bit of unease on my part because when I look at the ballot every single year, most of the ballot items, most of the warrants are zoning changes. It's like, how does a single individual understand all of that from a layperson standpoint? And I keep thinking, there's just more and more and more. They don't seem to stop.
Well, let me put in a plug for coming to our work sessions and our public hearings. Those are very helpful because we do explain it pretty thoroughly. And we this year we've been working on amendments since we did amendments last year. So April, May, we started on them right away. We've been working on them right straight through, and I'd be happy to go over any that we have. But oftentimes it's a matter of that's a chunk of words I don't feel like reading. But with a little homework, you can find out what it is the amendment is all about. And a few years ago, the planning board tried to limit the number of amendments to 4 per year, and that was helpful. It's funny, people like that, and yet the past couple of years, I think we've gone back up in the number of amendments. Partly because there are things that need to be fixed in the ordinance. Little problems here and there that creep up as the year goes along. We realize, that needs to be fixed. We need to fill that loophole or whatever. So we're not necessarily creating more regulation. We're trying to clarify regulation and reduce regulation in a lot of instances. So if you read them thoroughly, you'll probably see that pattern a little bit.
Are most of those driven by actual situations that you encounter that become a sticky wicket, so to speak?
Yes. One we are working on this year, we did a kind of a temporary fix this last year because we had a fellow come in to develop next to a body of water with a commercial use that reading the ordinance literally, he couldn't do it. We thought, it should apply to within 100 feet of the body of water. But applied literally, you could have a 100-acre property, and you couldn't do it
Couldn't meet the
half a mile away from the water, the way it was written. So we did a temporary fix, and we are now coming up with something that's more permanent because we realize our temporary fix is not a good long-term fix. But that's one example. So, it is almost exclusively reacting to problems, which it'd be nice if we could, one of these years when we get our financial feedback under us, it would be nice to be able to see if we could get a firm to look at the entire ordinance and fix it. It's a big task just to do these little amendments for our very small staff, but it would be, it really could use an overhaul to fix it for the long term.
Well, how many ordinances do we have?
One, the zoning ordinances.
Okay.
I'm not sure what you mean.
All right. You're saying to reduce the number of regulations. My question is, well, is it this big? Is it that big? Is it this big? I mean, if you're constantly tweaking stuff, you got to have something to tweak. How many of these puppies do we have? And just explain define a puppy and how many do we have?
Well, I mean, the zoning ordinance is a book of a number of different types of regulations. The book's about that thick in my binder in the other room.
Okay.
But that includes a number of things. It addresses setbacks, it addresses parking, it addresses signage, it addresses sexually oriented businesses, it addresses all kinds of land uses, whatever you might have. It includes definitions of things, requirements for site plans, zoning board of adjustment explains their establishment and that kind of thing, and special exceptions and what's required for applying for those kinds of things. It explains, anything that's related to what we enforce here. That's the zoning ordinance, and that's what we work on. That as it's a work in progress.
Yeah. And has the number of pages of that gone up or down lately?
I have no idea. I haven't counted them. It's probably gone up. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
You're thinking that's a bad thing, I sense.
Yeah. I don't
Let
think
me
that's
explain one
I
thing
don't
that I
think
think
that's
is a
much of a
good thing.
surprise to these two gentlemen.
Well, let me explain
Or
something.
to our esteemed member of the media. She's already smiling.
Now allow Mr. Air to
Yeah,
explain
let me
why it
explain.
can be why it can be a good thing.
Last year, we passed an ordinance called the accessory apartment ordinance, because without that, you couldn't rent out part of your house to somebody. And we wanted to loosen up the restrictive ordinance and allow people to have an apartment in their home. Right now, you can only have your family members living in a family apartment. And we thought, well, if you can have family live there, why can't you have non-family live there? It didn't make much sense. And so we wrote an ordinance that allows for that. And that lengthened the zoning ordinance, but it also enlarged the freedom of our community. I am very much in favor of, frankly, reducing regulation where possible. And I think our planning board is by and large.
Okay.
So as much as it may appear that having more ordinance amendments is trying to reduce our freedoms, I think very much it's the opposite in recent years. If you look at what we tried to do, it's...
Well, I noticed that last year on the ballot, there was more opening up of things than not. But the question had to be asked because I haven't been down here for a couple of years.
I understand. We're not exactly fascinating down here. It's the stuff that we deal with.
You haven't been down here ever, have you? Because this is the first year they're here.
Well, I've been in the
last
office.
year. We were last year.
So,
All right, what else budget related do we have?
as far as budget numbers, I don't think we've got much. It's more of a question of does the budget fit the workload? And I think that'll be the question, as well as on the. I want to make sure I get the alphabet right. The LRPC correct.
So do you have the information you need here today to take that up?
Well, if I can-
take that up in the meeting.
If I can take those sheets and study them for a little bit, I think I may have more questions. The spreadsheets.
For not for today, but for the full session.
Oh, actually, I was hoping to take them home so I could look at them because there were some questions.
Yeah, to talk about it on Thursday night.
In the full session.
Well, I wanted to study them like tonight or tomorrow.
Well, you want to come back, or you?
No, I just want to take them home so I can look at them. I can't. I know the building permit number is 121.
That's
I
my
don't know
question.
how many of the others
That's my
are.
question. So are we done here today? Do you have what you need today? Or do we have additional questions for?
No, I don't have questions. It's just our summary, what we want to decide on. What I saw through these discussions was the two things are the Lakes Region Planning Commission. One is John believes the number is going to be driven down by a couple $100, and then beyond that is, do we want to recommend or not recommend the Lakes Region Planning Commission, which would drive it down to zero. Those are the only two things I saw with this whole budget. Beyond the question that you asked.
Well, the question comes up like I asked on Thursday. Well, what if we just lowered the amount for that particular line item, like I did for the New Hampshire Municipal Association? What if you told the LRPC $8,500 is too high, but we will consider giving you a much lower figure, or a lower figure?
Yeah, well, I could ask them what their reaction is.
That figure is calculated by what? Their total expense divided by the number of communities?
And it's also based on population.
Size of the communities.
Right. So the sum total that they get, or they say they need, represents how they've split up whatever formula, whether it's size of population or whatever, by community. So if we do as Skip suggested, I'm assuming from their end they'd have to do one of two things. Lower the total amount they get, or spread the amount that we did not pay amongst other communities. Is there any other options you're aware of?
I don't know if we could even sign up to be a part.
If they went with this to begin with, I
Yeah,
mean, that's
no.
their option,
Right.
right? Lower,
I really have
lower
no
their
idea.
total operating costs
Or-
by the
or-
amount that we're not paying, or spread our costs to other communities.
Well, in
And
effect,
we don't really
tell
have any
us,
spare.
or tell us it's an all or nothing. Either you give
My
us
guess
this
is it's
number or
probably
you
all
get
or
nothing.
Yes.
That's my guess, because otherwise, well, that's my guess.
And we don't have a spare couple $100 or however much you're thinking of reducing it by, so we couldn't make up for it somewhere else in our budget. So it's not like they could say, no, it's either you pay it all or you don't join. It's either all or nothing, I think.
and if we
that's
don't
probably
join, that means they have to lower their operating costs anyways, to be honest. And partially that's what it is that we have no control over their expenses. It's a fait accompli by saying, this is your dues, guys, and we have no way to say, no, lower your costs instead,
Right.
other than by saying, that's it. You know,
I haven't heard anything here today that changes my understanding of what that commission does or will continue to do this year. So, how do we put this in the report? Last year we had a full presentation. Do we want to suggest? Well, first off, do we bring it up to the full committee saying this is something we all need to decide?
well, let's take a vote among the three of us right now. I would vote to lower that amount.
And I would vote to say, let's put this before the whole committee. Is, again, I'm trying to understand the value, and I'm not convinced on the value other than they're saying that this coordinates everything within the whole group of communities, which I look at it, well, is that an extra layer of government that perhaps we don't need? I don't know that.
Yeah, I have a hard time believing that one local town government just can't pick up the phone and call another one, or they couldn't just meet without saying, well, we have to have a paid facilitator to do something.
And the other question I have with that is, why can't we just call the state? I mean, isn't that the next level up for us, is to go to the state level on issues?
Yeah, that was the big contention last year. What, we have to go through another layer of government to get to the state? And I think the big deal was the additional traffic change that was being requested. That we had to go through them to get to the state, and that they could help grease the skids, as it were, to get a simple set of lights put in, which I thought was absolutely ludicrous that we had to do that. And I still think it's ludicrous. That just tells you the government's way too big.
I would suggest that we just, in this report, we leave this as an open item for discussion with the committee, and then the full committee can decide whether either we come to a decision or we have to have Kim back in again.
Yeah, and it would be nice to know if I should have Kim come into that meeting, or if you would discuss it among the group and take a little straw poll or vote or whatever, and then have him come in later to re-explain, or what you're going to do. It would be nice. I'd like to see him be able to have a chance to explain
Well,
what
I
he
vote for
does.
the latter, and besides, I don't think we could expect him, today's Tuesday.
Yeah.
To be here by
that's right.
Thursday.
Yeah, Thursday.
Yeah. I have no problem having. If he wants to come back in, I have no problem listening again.
Well, I don't either, but I think we bring it up to the full committee and say, we have not decided on this. We think it is a full committee discussion issue.
That's fine.
And then if we can make our way through and come to a conclusion, great. If we all feel we need to have Kevin back in again, then we'll have to give him proper notice to do that.
Are any of you on the DPW review subcommittee?
Not I.
No, I'm not this year. I did the DPW last year, so I wanted to do different ones.
Yeah, I
I
think
was just going to say you
Kevin
might want to
and
ask Sheldon about it.
Pat are on it this year.
I suppose you could call Sheldon anyhow, but it would probably be worth
Well, I think
hearing
that-
his perspective. I don't know that he got it.
I think it
weighed
came
in
up
on
last year during the discussions of this whole thing, that Sheldon should have some input, but then it didn't come to that.
I don't see that on this list either, DPW.
I thought I saw some.
So, okay, so that one's not,
Yeah, I see it there.
I mean, that's an open item for full discussion. Any other open, I mean, the questions you have about general activity and up and down, and is a full committee discussion point?
I think it should be.
Because, because it doesn't materially affect any number we're saying we approve or don't approve here today in this report, right? When I write the thing up, I'm not saying...
Yeah, I would say,
Right.
yeah, I'm good with that.
Okay.
Let's put it that way.
We write it up with, so far, no changes, save for the amount that we know LRPC has come down with, which is a couple $100.
Yeah.
So you can give me that
Yeah, I can
final
give you that.
number, and that
Give
total
it to you
number,
before you
that'll reduce your bottom line by a couple $100.
Yeah.
So we write it up that way, with the open items being LRPC and whatever else you want to discuss.
Oh,
in the
see,
general.
the DPW is on the next page, it's Pat and Kevin.
Yeah, the workload.
Kevin Leandro on that, I'm sorry.
And where were you a few years ago when we were out straight with building permits? Saying, hey, those guys need more money.
And you know something, since you have to go physically on site to do that, I get that. But at the same time, when the workload contracts,
Yeah. Well, that's why our department is contracting, I guess. I mean, that is the effort of the selectmen at this point. So they're seeing the contraction and contracting as well. So, and we're feeling it. We are feeling it. It's interesting. I didn't think I'd notice it as much as we have with one person reduced to half time, but it's been very noticeable. I'm on the phone a whole lot more than I used to.
You're taking these, you said?
yes, sir.
So we're done?
I have no other questions.
All right.
We are done.
So do I need to be prepared with anything extra 2 nights from tonight?
Not that I'm aware of.
No gotchas from me, other than
Yeah,
I
that's
may have
regional
more
planning commission's the only thing that's
numerical
supposed to have
questions
any
on
this
for the
major
workload.
discussion.
That's about it.
All right.
And I do think, well, you wouldn't have been able to get him here by Thursday anyway.
Probably not. I know we tried that last year, kind of short notice, and he was busy. But give him enough lead time, and he can be.
And I'll try and get
Whatever
this
you
right
have
up to you
spot.
Thursday morning, but since there's, you know what's in it, we're not coming back with any number change.
Croc TV.